Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
I was curious if you would talk about enjoyment and that the point of life is enjoyment and the enjoyment of God.
It's not enjoyment of God that Trika's talking about, except on the most absolute level. So it's not really an enjoyment of an object that one believes is external to oneself. It's an enjoyment of one's own nature. So contemplating and enjoying one's own nature. And in order to have that enjoyment, you have to have an experience of one's own nature. That's the rub. So if you take a step back from human life, you'll notice that we seek enjoyment in a totally bizarre way. I mean, it's bizarre that we're constantly seeking it in every aspect of our lives, that we become addicted to things that we find enjoyable, that we are pain averse and sadness averse and loss averse. Already you're thinking, of course. That's not of course. All of those things are flavors that God is producing. One is not better than the other. We produce all kinds of circumstances and objects for our own enjoyment. And the degree to which our everyday lives are in the pursuit of some kind of enjoyment is quite astounding, quite odd. But if you look at it from the perspective that we are reflections of the nature of God, then our maniacal enjoyment seeking can be seen for what it really is, which is a limited version of God's enjoyment of the nature of the self, or of the self. This is why we can practice, because everything that's happening here is a reflection of the nature of the self. Everything that we do is a reflection of what God does. We are what God does. But our individualized experience is very limited. And so, whereas when people are more awake, they don't suffer. We suffer, or we have that experience. We think we're suffering. In order to stop suffering, we have to start recognizing that bigger enjoyment. We have to start recognizing what's really going on here. As long as we're still seeking individualized styles of enjoyment, individualized styles of satisfaction and fulfillment, as long as those are the definition of what we think human life is about, or what we think will make us ultimately happy, as long as those are our convictions, we suffer. But for all of reality, the object of enjoyment is really not an object at all. It's not something you can get or give away. It's just the nature of the self. And that enjoyment can't really be defined, but there's a sense of wonder at the nature of reality, the nature of the self, the nature of God, all three ways of saying the same thing. There's a sense of wonder, of awe at this. And then there's the aesthetic enjoyment of what it is doing, what that subjectivity is doing, producing these wild experiences. I mean, we all love it when we have a really colorful, interesting dream. Right? Why? Because it seems creative and unusual and interesting and magical. And that's something a little bit like God's enjoyment of the self, of everything here being that kind of magical display of the self. We also enjoy watching really well-made movies with good production values.
I don't know what that means.
What does good production values mean?
Whatever that means, it could be just technically perfect, but cinematically very mediocre. You know?
That can happen too, right? Exactly. But what makes something mediocre? That's an interesting question. When we go to see a movie, what makes it mediocre? Big blockbuster, lots of money put into it, but we come out going, oh my God, I'll never get that time back. What causes that experience?
Sometimes if it's unoriginal, if it's just the same old thing.
Yes. Something that's just cliched. Right? You kind of know exactly what's going to happen already. All the lines that people are speaking seem like cliches, eye-rolly. Is this reminding you of anyone?
But what it makes me think about is just something where something can be really ordinary is more mediocre, but then something can be incredibly ordinary, but like really profound. Just in
That's
terms
right.
of like the poetry and the drama and the intimacy in the ordinary.
Right. Mm-hmm. And an element of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's going to be said or what's going to happen. Has a lot of layers, a lot of subtlety, a lot of depth. So what we're describing about movies could be said of us too. I mean, what makes us boring and what makes us interesting?
Well, that's kind of what that's what I'm thinking of. Just thinking about how something. I mean, because I spent my entire life being glamorous, and now I'm just like, I just want to just be ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of just being okay in that.
Mm-hmm. So, but then to not be boring, you'll have to get out of your emotional, repetitive responses. There's the rub. It's not just about how you look. If all we needed to do was like do something with our outer appearance, wow. I could just be a fashion consultant. That'd be a much easier job.
I was thinking about just just looks. I mean, like all the glamour and the sparkliness.
Right. But one of the things that makes us most deeply boring is that we repeat our emotional patterns. Profoundly boring. And our senses are dull. So it's not just that we repeat our emotional patterns. It's that we don't have interesting perceptions because our senses are dull. And if we think about movies, again, we know exactly what you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But it applies to everything.